Dr. Mark Changizi here, the Science Monk. Today I'm going to talk about which fields, the hard sciences, and by that I'll really just refer to physics as a really great example of a hard science versus soft sciences like psychology, biology. And there's this notion that, one is hard and one is soft, and there's a lot of different intuitions that get wrapped up in those in terms of how hard they are to do or to minimally do and so forth. But one intuition I think that folks have, which is, and a lot of these intuitions I think are false, is that physics is more amenable to grand unifying theories that are super elegant, right? That you can have a grand unifying theory, a theory of everything that's super elegant and beautiful. Whereas the soft sciences are wispy and difficult to get a handle on, and you kind of have to just throw sort of a wide net and say vague things, and really that's the best that you can do. Now I think it's in fact the opposite of that, and the reason is that in physics there's no design. There's no designer or something that acts as a designer, as there is in evolution or cultural evolution. Natural selection and cultural evolution design things. Over time, there are selection pressures which ensure that all of these different kinds of organisms get designed. And when they're designed, they're highly susceptible and amenable to simple explanations. Just as all of the equipment at Lowe's or at Home Depot and all of these stores, each of those things does something. And here's how it does it. Here are the principles by which it does it. Right? And so then you can just write down those principles. You can say, here's what it's good at. Here's what it's designed to do. And here are the principles that allow it to do that. That's what makes a great theory. But in the case of physics, well, there is no design. There's no reason for it to be that way. So you end up with things like in a standard model where you can kind of ever so barely summarize it in these kinds of figures like you'll see here. But it's got tons and tons of parameters, way more parameters than sort of makes sense given the number of things that you're able to explain. And that's fine, because it's physics. You're not expecting some super elegant theory that can explain it all, because it's not designed. It hasn't been selected to do an elegant function that you can then explain. I mean, there's no reason to think that it's like that at all. Whereas, let me give you an example from Dr. Tim Barber, my most recent book, Expressly Human, which is about emotional expressions. What could be more wispy and soft than that? Right? But when you get folks who are mathematicians, hard science trained folks, going after it, well, it's possible to get a grand unifying theory. Why? Because it's been selected for. So it turns out our emotional expressions are in fact the language that you can derive from first principles that any social animal needs to negotiate without proper language. That is, you don't have proper language, so you need some kind of signaling system to engage in somewhat honest negotiations with other social animals. This is the language, and you can derive it from first principles, and it's super elegant, and you get diagrams like I've talked about before that look like this, right? And there's only like 4 parameters, and they give you exactly the entire space of things that 4 parameters can give you. It's not giving, it's not like I'm using 4 parameters to explain 4 things. No, I'm using 4 parameters to explain 81 things. A whole explosion of 4-dimensional space. Right? In the case of perceptual illusions, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I had this grand unifying theory of illusions, also seemingly wispy. All these different kinds of illusions and different kinds of modalities within motion and size and contrast, all of these different kinds of illusions. Well, again, they've been selected to do something, and so that you can work that out and sort of encapsulate it as one fundamental idea. In this case, it's correcting for neural delay. So I wanted to undo this intuition that the hard sciences are the areas where we can expect grand unifying theories, and the soft sciences, well, it's always going to be wispy theories. That's not true at all, right? That's not true at all. In fact, it's very often the other way around. Not that it's easy, but it's at least susceptible. And then when you get theorists who are good at the hard sciences and good at these kinds of theoretical skills, you can often make progress and get grand unifying theories in the biological and the psychological domain. And that was your Science Moment. If you haven't gotten a copy of our Expressly Human that I just talked about, you Get it today at Amazon and other places that good books are sold.